Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Bilingual Find Your Place podcast. Desiring to show that it is possible to make unpopular choices, even out of the norm, and be happy, wishing to prove that happiness comes from choosing yourself rather than giving in to popular pressure, I receive people who have made the best of a situation that put them in the different box. My name is Stephanie Bergo, and I'm the host of this show. I've been working as a potential catalyst for more than 10 years, and my mission is to allow people to give themselves the right to be all that they are, and thus believe that their dreams are achievable. Welcome to these interviews. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Find Your Place podcast, the bilingual podcast. So today is going to be an English interviews with Irene Kainz. I'm super lucky you accepted my invitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie. I'm so happy to be invited, and I can't wait for our talk. I'm very excited. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So we've talked a bit before because we don't know each other much. We follow each other on social media, and you were telling me that you're born and raised in Austria, and I'm in Canada, which I find it very cool that we're able to chat like that from abroad.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love these technologies. I mean, I don't feel that old, but I definitely have experienced other times, right? So it's amazing what can happen within a lifetime, right?
Yeah, totally. And we get to meet people when we travel, and now we get to meet people only because of technology. That's amazing. So I told you already we're gonna talk about yourself today. I was wondering, were you always an entrepreneur? Do you think that it was always the case, or it became evident later? How did you become an entrepreneur?
I guess in my soul, always. I was always an entrepreneur. I grew up at the farm. So I grew up in a household where everything was quite self-led, if we want to use this modern term on that. I mean, you know, in a farm, you do your own work, and you have your own dependencies on weather, and you have to, you know, be prepared for all kinds of things, and you have to do the marketing of all these things. So I was grown up in an environment where it was kind of normal. I mean, the entire village I grew up, everyone was farmers. So it was normal to work for yourself and for your own interests and for your own money. Although for the generation which I was born in, a lot of people, you know, went into corporate world and did employment jobs. And I did that too for a while, but always felt that, you know, I have such a strong sense of what I want. I always had that, what I want to work. It always had to resonate with me in some kind. I was working in art industry, for example, and cultural industry, and in a huge museum, for example, in Austria, in Vienna. And you know, I always had the sense of, you know, it has to make sense for me, what I'm doing. I just can't do anything.
Already at the beginning.
From the very beginning.
That's
and also
cool.
What I realized quite quickly, once I had my first employment jobs, I realized it is equal important for me, like the sense, you know, it has to resonate with me on one hand, the content of the work, and the other hand is the relationships of my co-workers are as important. So I knew, I mean, I always could, of course, do any kind of job, but I knew it's not me to do any kind of job. The atmosphere has to be right, and I have to go in resonance about the topic. So it narrowed things down.
Yeah, so the environment was already important at the beginning, which sometimes what I see is we get that later on, after having, like, I don't know, bad experiences, or after figuring out that that's like work or work hours are an important part of our life. So if it doesn't feel good because of the colleagues, or because you're missing the sense of belonging, or all of those.
Yeah.
So that's very cool that at the beginning you already knew, but it might have been sometimes difficult to find a great environment to work in, no?
Let me check. I mean, this is quite a long time ago when I started with my first jobs. I mean, of course, I was ready to have my experiments and get my experiences, but I knew that I was driven, towards those values. It wasn't always perfect for that, but I was, every time I went into a job interview, for example, I knew these are my values, and I'm not going for,
Yeah.
if I feel one of those is really not right, then it's not my job.
What I love about what you're saying is, already at that young age, you knew it was your responsibility to make sure that you are in an environment that you love and that fits your values.
Yeah,
that's super
definitely,
cool.
Definitely, yeah. So then at this museum, I was mentioning, this is a very it's actually the largest museum in Vienna. It was the first time that I was not employed, but I was a freelancer.
Okay.
And I did tours in the museum, and I guided people through the exhibitions, and from kindergarten on to grown-ups. And I loved that job. I really loved it. And we were getting paid, or I was getting paid. We were a team. We were getting paid for the tours. And I could take it, or I could, I didn't have to take a tour. I mean, there was that many tours, and we could, just split it, and choose. So I really enjoyed that, and I really loved that, and it gave me the freedom to choose my hours. In cultural industry, at least here in Austria, everything starts very late anyway. So this is also my
extraordinary.
So before 10 in the morning, there isn't much happening.
Yeah.
So I always liked that as well. And and later on, I worked for the TV, also in the cultural department. This was again an employment job, but also very flexible. I had to be my number of hours there, but basically I could, rearrange it a lot towards my interests. I mean, of course, I had to be available for colleagues and stuff, but it didn't matter if I would come in the morning an hour earlier or an hour later. It wasn't
that's cool.
Such a big deal. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then how I came to really entrepreneurship was, one hand, I always felt this is, I want to be my own boss. I always felt that way. And with what I was doing, I had this big realization once I was living abroad in Mexico for 2 or 3 years almost. And I was working for a small bed and breakfast, also in a international team, and we were all doing basically everything. And there were a few of my colleagues who were trained massage therapists. And they wanted to have their own massages, so they trained me.
Oh, that's cool.
So I could massage them and they would massage me, and so we had a little massaging circle, and it was really cool, and I learned a lot. I really learned a lot. Although it was an non-official training, it was just a friendship training. And I loved that so much. And it was barefoot in the sand on the beach with the balapa, and it was like I felt it so strongly. The energy was so strong that I always had in my mind, sometimes I'm gonna get a professional training in any kind of body work. So after I came back to Austria, I had, I got offered this job in the museum, which was really great. So I did this for a while, and then the offer for the TV came. This was really great as well. But I always had in my back, I actually want to do, this training. And the really positive aspect I really appreciated a lot about the employment at the TV station was that I was sure I can afford my training. I did make enough money so I could enroll in my shiatsu training. I decided for shiatsu then, which is a Japanese bodywork.
Yes.
And I did it next to my full-time employment.
Wow.
And I really loved it. And then I became pregnant.
Oh,
and
cool.
after my maternity leave, I did not go back to the TV station, but I started my self-employed thing.
So at that time did you start it while you were on mat leaves, or at the end of mat leaves you started a shiatsu studio, or how was it?
I mean, I did this thing that at the end of my maternity leave, I took another 6 months, I think, for a sabbatical, and in that time I started my studio.
And was it in Vienna at that time?
Yes. Yes.
And how did it work? Like, you managed the family and professional life together? Was it difficult at the beginning, or?
Well, I always had this approach that, I mean, if I'm self-employed, one of the advantages for me have to be that it gives me flexibility towards those things. They're important as well, which, being a mom, of course, is important to me, and being available for my kid in whenever the kids need it, and not necessarily I have a free schedule.
Yes, clearly.
So this, I mean, you also have disadvantages, of course, being self-employed, especially in the beginning. You most of the time have less money, and you work also, they're flexible, so I mean, you probably have not less vacation and stuff like that, but the advantage, of course, is that I can choose the flexibility for me and my family as well, and this was very important. So I could the appointments I had, I felt I'm it's within my power if I I keep them, or if I postpone then when the kid is sick or something. And I guess it feels a little bit different if you call in work and you say, my kid is sick, or you call your client and postpone your appointment. To me, it feels different, because there is this direct relationship, and then the client also knows when he has stuff which isn't foreseen or something. I mean, this is a relationship thing. And the other thing is a contract thing. So I rather go for I like more the relationship thing.
Yeah, exactly. And at that time, the shiatsu was known in Vienna, or was it difficult to build that? Because I know here in Canada, now it's a bit more, I'd use popular, or there's a bit more awareness about around those type of practice, but it clearly wasn't the case a couple of years ago.
Actually, there was done a really good lobbying work in the 90s.
Oh,
but very much regional. Do you say that? Like very much only in Vienna, like really in the city, not all over Austria. I mean, it became more popular over the years all over Austria, but I don't know. There was this thing that there were a few shiatsu therapists in Vienna in the 90s, or yeah, I think it was in the 90s, who really went into politics, or like, you know, did lobbying work with politicians to maintain a certain standard, and also so you could practice it very legal. You know, there was a certification that, you know, was and approved. So this is actually the reason why I chose shiatsu, because with a lot of other therapy forms, it was always this kind of, yeah, it's a beautiful work, but it's not really, you know, approved. Yes. And you always it could be that you're in this legal gray zone with it, practicing it. And shiatsu stood out there. So this was actually my strongest reason why I did that. I would have chosen craniosacral therapy.
Yes.
But then once I started with the training, I realized shiatsu really is mine. It was, yeah, I really fell in love with it. So I never regretted that decision.
And that's super interesting. And so are you still doing exactly what you were doing at the beginning, or it evolved, or you changed stuff?
This is now 15 years that I started.
Oh, wow.
With my training, and I'm like 10 years now with my self-employment. Yeah, and it has, you know, evolved a lot. It is really funny because just yesterday a client was asking me something about the meridians. And then I was like, wow, I already start losing some of the
yeah, knowledge learned in school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's, you know, the practice, the basics. You know?
I mean, yeah. I totally have them integrated, but it's like, you know, the theoretical basics, I can't explain them that good anymore. Yeah, but on the other hand, I think it would be fun to get together with other practitioners again, but I think I've really evolved my own style, and I still love it, and I still love doing it, and it's beautiful. Although it's not my main work anymore.
Yes.
It's I also went into online coaching the last few years. I always was interested and did my first steps already before COVID. But with COVID, I decided really to go into there. And my second big interest, I mean, it all, my big interest is personal development. So the shiatsu goes into that interest, and the other one, which is unschooling, goes there as well.
Totally.
And so I'm working with mainly parents, not necessarily only parents, but mainly parents on their personal development, so they can create a creative and inspiring field for their kids, so they never have to heal that much conditioning and trauma from unconscious behaviors.
Yeah,
you
totally.
know? Yeah.
And are your client in coaching mostly unschoolers parents or not?
Not really. I mean, they all have some kind of interest in it. Some of them do it, but not necessarily. I mean, for some, it's a start in
Yes.
that. But to me, it's not that much about, you know, everybody has to be an unschooler. It's just the values behind why one decides to don't put their kids in school. It's about those values, and if you're getting into this individual freedom of those values, then you know the paths are quite individual as well. So it's much more about connecting to your own source and to your own soul guidance than promoting the path of unschooling.
Yeah, totally. And so earlier you talked about one kid you had between leaving the TV and starting your own business. How many do you have now? Do you still have one?
Yes, my son is 13 now.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Grows up, eh? That's crazy. And did you knew at the beginning when he was born that you were not gonna send him to school and that your own employment would serve that purpose, or not at that time?
No, I knew that my own employment would serve the family purpose.
Yes, clearly.
And that's definitely, and I also knew that I wouldn't want to put my son into regular school system. I always knew that it had to be an alternative school like Montessori or Waldorf or something like that.
Yes.
But then when he was 6 years old, which is in Austria the time when kids need to go to school, we weren't living in Vienna anymore. We were living at the countryside, and there was only one alternative school in the entire area. And this one he rejected. He didn't want to go there because he didn't, you know, there was some trust issues with the teacher. The teacher proposed something she didn't keep. You know, she said he always can choose from which kind of project he wants to do. And so there was the situation where he finished a project and he already had in his mind what project he wants to do next. And then she said, no, not this one. You need to do this project next. And then for him, this was like a huge betrayal. Yes, it was a huge betrayal. And then he refused to go there. And it was a strong thing because his father one day brought him there and he was crying, didn't want to stay, our son. And my father still left him there and came back home and was completely through the roof. And he said, this was so hard. He doesn't think that he could do it in another time. When, you know, when our son is crying, he couldn't leave him there anymore. And I said, well, I couldn't have done it in the first place. So we have a problem now, you know.
Yeah, we need to do
think
something
about
with
something
that. Yeah.
And then this was the time when, at least in the German speaking area, the first online summits came up. I mean, this is 7 years ago. And, you know, like a miracle, there was this, all of a sudden, this online summit on free and self-led education. And I've heard about it before, but I always thought, well, this is one of those alternative schooling thing or pedagogical things. And then through the summit, I realized, no, this is something completely different. I mean, this is not pedagogic, you know.
Parents-led.
This is really not even parents-led. This is really like what I always understood with potential development within ourselves as adults, but from the very beginning, and really have like everything open with no curriculum, no expectation that, you know, learning.
Yeah, fully
We
unschooling.
already, yes, we know that. Meanwhile, we know from brain science that we learn when we're like in a good mood, when we are like inspired, when we have oxytocin in our blood, you know, when we feel excited, and if we have good relationships with the people around us. And this is what nurtures learning. And what we as a society get conditioned on is learning is sitting with other same age people and one teacher in a room in hourly segments.
Yeah, sorry, I was laughing, yeah, because my son was crawling in front of me because I asked them not to disturb me while we were doing interview. So I was like, what an amazing moment to do so. Because if you don't know, we're also unschoolers.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, so when I read your when you answered my question, I was like, oh, what a great thing. That's amazing. And that's super interesting what you're explaining, because I often explain to people that don't know about homeschooling and unschooling and stuff that it's like a rainbow. There's as many types of homeschooler, then there's family doing home or unschooling. And there's a gradation. You were talking about like unschooling, where the education and the learnings are led by the kids. And I really think it's amazing. And it's when I explain it to people that are in the normal system, it's very, very far from what you learn when you go to school. And as I did years of studying, I went to the master and everything, people are sometimes like, but you did believe in school, how come now you don't? And I'm like, it's not that I don't believe in school, I just believe that sometimes it doesn't suit everyone. And if it doesn't, like, they have to get the choice to do it differently. And we're not totally unschoolers. We're a bit teaching, like reading and writing. And what you were saying, kids learn when they are in a good environment and that they love it. And we see it totally. Because we had close to the same experience. My son went to kindergarten for 6 months, and at Christmas, he didn't want to go back. He was scared. He felt he was not enough. He wasn't good enough. He wasn't reading as fast as they should. But he wasn't interested in that. So it took almost a year before he accepted to read again. So now we're very into playful learning of reading and writing. So he has fun. Like, for example, the Scrabble letters and stuff like that. So it's been very interesting, but much more than only the unschooling part. It's been an eye-opening on many, many things in my life and in my coaching business. Like, I mean, if you let people at those young age make decisions for themselves, they are much better. They are 6 and 8, and the older one is almost 18, and she did 2 years of homeschooling because she wanted to do it online, but it was led by her, and she chose the subject and everything. And now she's in, well, the equivalent of the beginning of university and in Quebec, and she loves it. And so I think that when you teach them or let them learn that responsibility is on their side for their well-being and learning and whatever, get them to grow stronger for themselves, not for myself, but for themselves. So sometimes it's very fun because it gives us a funny, funny moment when you're like, where did that come from? Like, I didn't see that coming. But it gives miracle too. Because, for example, my son doesn't want to read. It's something very difficult. But he loves Minecraft. He's a geek and he loves it. And we found a class for homeschoolers, which is in about half an hour. But as they teach them how to code to do the special thing in Minecraft, well, we get him to read and write. But it's because he really, really want to create some stuff in Minecraft. So we're by another way, another path, making sure he writes, he reads, he works on creativity, he learns many things, even maths and stuff. So it's very interesting because I've been building classes and training for years. I've been a university teacher and everything. So it's very interesting to see, like, even in those structure, I was always the reverse teacher. Like I don't like to pour theory and stuff into the head of my student, even like young or adult student. And at that time, I was a bit the strange one that was doing project in university and some stuff so they can integrate their learnings. And now that I'm homeschooling or unschooling or kids, and my husband's the one most taking care of that because I work a lot, but like probably for yourself too, like the family dynamics has changed so much because like small things, they woke up when they woke up, like if they're tired they go to bed, if they're awake they wake up and they do activities and they choose. Like, for example, my son crawled because he was going to do Legos. And I was like, okay, well, sure, go do Legos. So it's super interesting, that part. And it doesn't change only the family place, it changed everything because it made me reflect on so many things about learning, about responsibility, about people getting to take action on their own well-being.
Yes.
That's super interesting.
Thank you for sharing all that, because this is exactly also my insight. And this is what I wanted to try to say. You know, it's my approach is unschooling, but this is just a door opener, and then it leaves the field of unschooling again, because it's, you know, it opens so much. It opens basically anything within ourselves. And then we have this huge free field of our potential. And this, I love to work with people on their self-development and personal development. And the body work is another big part for that. So the principles I discovered in the body work, and then also guiding a young human getting educated and raising up, is it a word you say? And witnessing that, I think I received so many codes. Yes. And this is basically what I'm working with all my clients.
And it's super interesting because we're talking about the side where they learn and they get to decide what they want to learn. And I'm always saying to people that learning is a thing you do every second, and that you can do in every different ways. We go to a museum, they learn, we learn, we watch something on TV about the Mediterranean Sea, we learn, they learn. They so often teach us many things. Like my daughters crazy about music, and my son's crazy about all the sea animals and stuff. So we're learning so many things about like dolphins, for example, that we didn't know, or we've read when we were kids and didn't remember. And so it's very, very interesting, but much more about ourselves, because leading kids out of the regular track for me has been a nice challenge. And sometimes I know, like for the reading, for example, at first when he didn't want to read again, after we put him out of school, I was a bit scared. I was like, okay, what, is he never gonna read? And finally talking to other parents that are unschoolers and reading some stuff on it, I realized that one day it's like the rest, eh? One day they sleep in their own bed, one day they eat by themselves, one day they're not wearing diapers anymore, one day and I have an 18 years old daughter, so I know one day they don't sleep with you anymore, and one day they get to grow, and they grow on everything. They eat better, they try new stuff, they learn to walk, they learn to talk, and sometimes other languages. My son learned English on his own, watching some TV show that existed only in English on animals. And we went in Mexico last winter, and a mom came to us and say, "Is it his first language?" And we're like, "No." And we haven't figured out at that time that he was that good. We knew he was conversing and everything, but not that good. I was very impressed, and we didn't do anything clearly to do that. And my younger one doesn't feel like languages are cool, other than when we travel and she's not able to talk with people, because she's a very social human and she likes to interact. And when she can't, it's the good moment for her to learn English, for example, or Spanish, because she's like, what? I can't communicate with people with words. So she tries other ways and it always worked. But so the drivers or is not the same for each of them. So one's the social one, and Joshua's the learner one, and he loves to play Minecraft, and it's all in English, and so it's super funny. So sometimes I get to reflect, and often I get to reflect on my own fears, like to be able to let them choose their path and work on my conviction as well. I don't know on your side in Austria, but here COVID helped, because many families choose to unschool or to own school and to get out of the real system, because schools were closed for a couple of months. So all the parents needed to do the teaching at home, and some were like, oh, that's very cool, and it gives me more flexibility, more time, more everything. Oh, they learn some stuff. Even when you're schooling your kids at home, they learn faster. They're by themselves with you. And so many family choose it, but it's not, we're like maybe 5% of the population. So most of the time when we talk about this outside this homeschooling or unschooling community, we often get question for sure, and sometimes even people are scared, so they're sharing their fears, and we come back home and we're like, are we for example restraining them from learning that sometimes you need to do stuff because, and like, it's okay to have responsibility. So we're often putting yourself a doubt, saying, okay, is it the good way? Does it works for all of them? Are they happy like that? Would they like to be that we do it differently? So it's super interesting, and it helps us grow much more.
Yeah, yeah.
And we thought,
You said earlier that we are basically, and not only kids, all of us, all humans are learning every second, right? And there is this beautiful book that came out a couple years ago from the Austrian homeschooling and unschooling community, which is called "Learning is like breathing," which I really love, that sentence. And yes, COVID also put a spotlight on this homeschooling thing also here in Austria. And there were a lot of families who took their kids out of school, like during those COVID years. But meanwhile, a lot of them went back to school. Some of them because they realized they prefer it in school, but a lot of them also because the government put on more restrictions onto homeschooling.
On our side too.
In Canada as well, yeah. So this is a big issue actually right now because it became more restricted and we always had to deal with it. It always was in Austria like one exam at the end of the school year for homeschoolers, but you could choose the school and you could, build a relationship with the teachers and you could talk and you could, prepare for that setting and that situation. And now that's not possible anymore. The government chooses the school and you're not allowed, or you're not, it's not intended to have, talks before and to build relationships before. And the exam is much longer and more strict, and it's even now more closer to the curriculum. And really, it's actually, they expect more from homeschoolers than from schoolers.
Yes, same here. Exactly.
So
they're not giving us the tools, but they expect us to be right on. And before pandemic, in Canada, homeschooling was free for a couple of, for years. And since the last 5 years, we have to register and we have to put it pedagogical curriculum that we will follow based on the one they do in school. And we get to choose if we're handing out a portfolio with pictures and some stuff we've did, or if we're gonna be evaluated by a teacher. For now, we choose the portfolio, but there's a couple of years, like for example, for Joshua, next year, and in secondary, we need to do the ministerial exam, and those are in a room at the schooling structure, not even in a school, in an empty room, 3 hours by yourself. So we're a lot fighting here too for those things, because it's not the environment we've put them for years, and now you want to evaluate if they learn in a super stressful environment which doesn't match at all what we've chosen. So yes, we're at the same place.
That's interesting to hear. Yes, yeah, and here is like a lot of families are fighting here as well, and trying to because also the law is not really I mean, it's not really regulated really. I mean, they did some new regulations, but it's contradictory to other laws, and it's an interesting situation. And a lot of families are not happy and don't want to keep it like this.
Yeah, same for us. Actually, there's some ways it's not totally clear, because for example, you can homeschool your kids if you're going to do world traveling all over the world for a year, for example. And as you're not on the Quebec, because Quebec and the rest of Canada are different because it's a region thing. So we're the only one in North America that doesn't allow liberate school. So it's the only place in North America where it's illegal. You cannot put your kids in those type of school. They don't exist here in Quebec. So that's the first thing. But the law is, if you are on ground here, you need to do all those things. If you're not, you're not. So many people are like, okay, perfect. We're going to be leaving after a year or 4 months. And they're testing. Is it okay if they didn't do the exam, as we were not there for a couple of months? And so others are testing other stuff. And like, I don't think homeschooler and unschoolers fit in boundaries. They're like naturally the type of people pushing those boundaries, which is okay. I think it expand the society to have people pushing a bit the boundaries. And you were talking about alternative school a bit earlier. Here in Quebec, alternative schools are parents' project. So parents that build a group and then try to build an alternative school, and then when it's built, it's okay. But for example, when we started school with Joshua, we wanted to go in those type of school. We were 150 families for 6 spots. So we're missing a lot of spots in those type of school, even if a lot of us parents here in Quebec would love to have a different type of education than the formal one. So,
and this is so interesting because I mean, why I already knew before I became a mom that when I'm a mom, I want to have my kid in alternative schools is not necessarily because I think they're learning better, whatever this really means there, but I could see that, you know, the emotional foundation, the social interaction with each other, there is a different emphasis on it, like I see it in regular schooling. And this is what is my most important value when I'm, you know, supporting my child growing up, is that he has a good foundation of how to relate as a human, really healthy. And I don't see that. I don't see that in regular schools. I'm really, I don't like saying it really, because I wish it would be different, but I don't see it really all over the world.
And I'm sure human doing those structure, because the problem is the structure. It's not the human composing it. Like many teachers are awesome, but they are in structure that doesn't help them achieve what they like. I don't know for you in Austria, but here there's many, like the percentage of new teacher that leave the profession in the first 5 years are incredibly high. So it's not only for the kids that it doesn't fit.
In Austria, there is a huge problem because I think in the next 5 years, there will be a huge wave of teachers retiring, and there are no young teachers because they either left or didn't even get into the job anymore.
Yes. Same.
So this is there will be a huge problem in just a few years' time.
Hopefully that will drain attention to it, and like the structures will change to fit more the learners' abilities, the learners' well-being, the teacher well-being, the way they teach, what they teach. Because I don't know for you in Austria, but here school didn't change since 1950s, but the work space did change a lot.
The entire world changed, right? And I mean, bullying is a huge topic. I mean, really, and even with this homework, I see, I'm working with so many parents who have this huge issue that, you know, school brings this homework into the household, into the family, and then the bullying starts there.
Continues.
So what happens really is that the child, everywhere he goes, he he can't trust anymore to be seen, to be heard, to,
Yes.
because in everywhere he is, there is something expected, which in most cases doesn't resonate with the child.
No,
And all those
clearly.
restrictions, with the restrictions of like, how the entire day is scheduled for a kid. I mean, there is no sense of freedom at all.
Exact. And there's no sense of discovering too, because the structure is so strict. And I'm not saying they don't discover nothing. I'm just saying that, for example, no free space. And that's not only for kids, it's for adults too. What are we teaching? Or like, I coach many people to free space in their mind, because it's like that creativity is gonna come, that well-being is gonna stay. That so we're having kids that leave school at 3 or 4, depending on how it works there too. And then they bring back job at home. If you, like, I don't know in Austria, but here, if you work 8 to 5, and at 5, normally others then higher job, you're not bringing back homework. You shouldn't. You should, like, at the end of the day, it's the personal space. So it's family space, activity space, relaxing space. But with the kids and the homework, we're not having those. And neuroscience is very clear about that.
Yes.
Like, it's needed.
Yes, absolutely.
It feels so good to speak to someone who understands our reality.
I just wanted to say the same thing. Yes, I agree.
So, see, I just wrote a post on Facebook asking for people that wanted to share their lives, and finally, even across the world, we fit with people. Like, we're both entrepreneurs having flexible life to better suits our family life, and that's super cool.
Yes.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much, Irene, to find space in your calendar for me.
Stephanie, thank you. Thank you for your interest and invitation, and I'm very happy.
Thanks everyone to be there too. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did, and see you next time. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. Come back next week with another guest that has a fascinating story to tell and that will inspire you to take action towards your own path. If you like this show, I'm inviting you to leave a 5-star review. That way, it helps us to spread the work and fulfill our mission even more. The podcast is also available in a video format on YouTube. You'll find it under the same name, Trouve ta place, Find your place, under Catalyseur de Potentiel. Let's connect on social media. You'll find me as Stéphanie Bergo or Catalyseur de Potentiel on Facebook or Instagram. Have a great day.